Hello and welcome to the gallery. My name is Jon and tonight we are painting Cthulhu. Sort of. This time around I'm going to paint up this Cthulhu Star Spawn miniature from Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures. From Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures, a D&D themed miniature company. And since I've been sick for the past few days, I'm gonna paint them up in a Nurgle theme. Now we're gonna start out here with the Cthulhu from Nolzur's, not gonna mention that name again because I obviously can't, miniatures. And as you can see, he's got a little bit of mold lines and he's got a little bit of crevice here and there that's not that perfect. So we're scraping off a few mold lines. We're going to fill in the cracks by his shoulders with a little bit of sprue goo, which is basically just sprues with plastic cement mixed in with it. So it is dissolved and you can put it in there. This is not perfectly done by any means, but we were just going for somewhat quick, somewhat simple here. It was just painting it by numbers almost. We start by putting a little bit of green in the behind because the bottom is clear, so you can see him rising up from beneath the water, as you can see. And then we use the Plague Bearer contrast paint, and that goes over the entire miniature. And there is a lot of miniature to go over. Where we get closer to the clear bits, we let a little bit of the green flow into the clear bits, because when we put the blue in the clear bits later on, it's gonna mix together and it's gonna make more of a natural turn from green to water. And that will look better, in my opinion at least. The thing is, with the contrast paints, you have to be careful not to let them sit for too long, because then they start to dry, of course, and you start to pull them away while you're painting with them. So in this case, we're trying to do this really quick and getting an even coat everywhere. And as you can see, it worked out somewhat okay. Most of this paint job will be done with contrast paints and shades and dry brush, because we want a natural feel to the entire model. So we're using a lot of paints that do the work for us, that will flow where we want them, and getting layers upon layers of different shades and colors in that area. Now blue on the water. It's the Thalasser blue contrast paint, because the base coats of the entire model are just done with contrast paint. And put a little bit of blue also on the green, and then we're gonna wet the brush and put it and mix it a little bit together, and that will make it flow a little bit better into each other. Now, when I was making this video, I noticed that my little channel here has gotten 200 subscribers, and thank you everybody very much for that. Now, this is not a huge amount by any means, but it feels good to be hitting some sort of mark every now and then. So thank you very much. Of course, if you haven't already, there is the button down there to be part of the next 200. So, just so you know. Now we continue on with Mr. Cthulhu Star Spawn here, and we're starting with a dark green shade, and we're flowing that into most of the recesses on his stomach, his arms, his face, and his eyes, and between his tendrils and fingers and everything. This goes over most of the miniatures, not on the top bits, just where there are bigger crevices. However, with his wings, we are using more of a Reichland flesh shade here, because we want a little bit of variant to it, and we're putting down the shade and then drying it off with our fingers, so it just goes in the crevices and doesn't tint the entire thing. We want variance in the colors, not wholly glazed. We do the same thing with his temples and the sides of his head. Here on his arms and where his stomach meets the water, we're putting in a blue shade, and it's the same thing as we did earlier. we're just putting a little bit on and then dabbing it off. On his tentacles, it's purple, and also around his temples again. And we're putting it down and then thinning it out with water so it has a more natural turn from purple to greeny, fleshy, disgusting hue. And then after all these shades and all these darknesses, let's get a little bit of highlights going with a quick method. Nurgling green paint dry brushed over the entire damn miniature. Face, shoulders, knees and toes. Well, not the knees and toes because it doesn't have that. Stomach, wings, everywhere. Just be careful not to go overboard because we want highlights, not coloring. And then white on the water, so it looks like water because it was flat blue, and we want a little bit of foam to all the bluey goodness. And even though the white is not clear like the blue, it's okay because it'll read good on the model once it's finished. And now for the eyes, it's an off-white that we're putting it into the eyes. Just a dab in each eye and then watering it down, glazing it around the eyes because we're gonna do a really soft OSL feel around the eyes. Yellow contrast paint in the eyeball itself and then a yellow glaze on all the white stuff that we put around it. Simple and easy. And then a dark grey contrast on the claws. It has green underneath and all the shade that we did earlier, but it just gives a little bit more flavor. And this model is designed as a big monster for your D&D game. So a quick paint job and not worrying too much about the details is fine. For his tentacles on his face, we dry brushed them a little bit too heavily earlier on. So we're now putting again some purple on it. And the same as before, we're putting the purple down, then watering it out a little bit and feathering it up so it has a more natural turn from green to purple. Black around the trim, as you most often do with bases, especially this base because it is clear and it stands out as a clear base. But even though I've already done the trim, which you usually end up with, I forgot about all his disgusting pimples, so yellow contrast on that. And after that, we're gonna throw down some art coat on both the tentacles, all the water, and the zits and disgusting bits on the back of his head to make it a little bit shiny and gross. And there we have him, a Cthulhu Star Spawn. Green and slimy and dirty and disgusting, quite nurgly. I'm kinda happy about that guy. Thank you very much for joining me here today. There are links in the description for all kinds of stuff, social media and various tidbits. You do with it what you will. Like, share and subscribe and
Finglui maglana fa Cthulhu relay vaganagal fataken.
But until next time, farewell.